A very warm and hearty good day to all of you. My name is Ramanpreet Kaur Bhatia. I'm a chartered accountant from the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India, a certified practicing accountant from CPA Australia, and a distinguished Toastmaster from Toastmasters International. In this video, I'm going to talk about the second step of internal analysis, and that second step is performance assessment. Again, when we analyze performance, there are again three steps of performance assessment, which is analyzing the strategic drivers, analyzing operational drivers, and analyzing people and operational drivers. Let us recall what we tried to understand in our previous videos. Firstly, we tried to have an understanding of key stakeholders of an organization, and we tried to analyze their needs so that we can set our future strategic goals. In our second step, we are trying to analyze a framework for performance assessment. In this video, I'll be talking more about operational drivers for performance assessment. Stay tuned. So when we say performance assessment, we try to understand what are the objectives of performance assessment. We want to understand the current performance so that we can try and make our future goals, so that we can try and set our future objectives. Unless we know where we are today, what we are capable of doing today, what we are capable of achieving today, we do not know our strengths. How far can we go? How far can we improve? How much more can we do? So for that, it is very essential, it is very necessary for an organization to assess its current performance. And for that, to assess the current performance, we know that there are three kinds of strategic drivers. There are three kinds of operational drivers. The first one is strategic driver, second one is operational driver, and the third and the last one is people and organizational drivers. Right? Strategic drivers, what differentiates us from our competitors? Operational drivers, what are the core activities that we must do well or that we do well that differentiates us from our competitors? And people and organizational drivers, it essentially means the human workforce, the people who are working with us, our kind of working, our culture, our behavior, because that is what makes our performance. We talked about the strategic drivers in one of our previous videos, so today we'll be concentrating more on operational drivers. Now we said that the strategy is concerned with meeting organizational objectives. So what are operational drivers? And how do we meet these organizational objectives with the help of organizational drivers? The key operational drivers for any organization are revenue, cost, and growth. So here we are trying to assess the performance measures which help us in achieving these objectives, which tries and measure how much revenue is increasing, how much cost we are bearing, and what are the growth prospects of the company. How do we plan these objectives, or how do we set these objectives? Because these objectives essentially reflect the goal of an organization. And it is these goals which depend on whether an organization will have a shareholder view or a stakeholder view. We need to understand what is our objective in terms of revenue, in terms of cost, in terms of growth. And accordingly, we will decide whether we are going to have a shareholder view or we are going to have a stakeholder view. What is shareholder view and stakeholder view? For that, We need to have our clear objectives. Once our objective is clear, we know how can we formulate our strategy. Okay, so what is shareholder view? Who is a shareholder? Who is giving money? Who is investing his money into the capital of the organization? The organization exists for these shareholders, because these are the shareholders who are putting their money in the organization. They are investing in the organization. They are investing in the capital of the organization. What is the basic need? Capital, right? That's the starting point. When can we start our organization? And why will someone put their money or invest their hard-earned money in an organization? Why? They want, they must be wanting something in return. What is their primary need? They want profits in return. They want something financial which is coming to them in the form of returns. So that, as a measure of performance, the return, financial return as a measure of performance, is the overall shareholder view. Value-based management. This essentially means that an organization is working and performing so that these shareholders can get a financial profit in return. These shareholders, they've started the organization. They've invested in the capital because they want to earn more money. So the whole sole aim is to earn money and to give that profit to these shareholders. That is the basic point, the crux point of a shareholder view. Right? So that's one part of the story. Now imagine a scenario where I am working, or an organization is working just to benefit those people who have invested their money in the organization. The shareholder said that you get me money in return by adopting whatever means. But as an organization, am I only responsible to these shareholders? No. I have my responsibilities towards so many other people who have invested not only their money but their interest in the organization. I have a level of I have a liability or a level of responsibility towards my customers. I have to give them genuine products. I also have a responsibility towards government. I have to pay them taxes. I have a responsibility or a general liability towards community in general, so that I can give more and more employment to people. Right? So these people are not expecting only money. They also have their interest in the organization. They also want organization to work well, so that they get those kinds of jobs, so that government can expect some taxes, so that the people, the customers in general can expect a genuine product from my organization. These people are not shareholders. These people are stakeholders. So that's the difference between the shareholder and a stakeholder. Shareholder is somebody who has invested money in the organization and they expect a financial return from the organization. But stakeholder is a larger band. It includes everybody who have their vested interest in the organization. It includes employees, government, customers, and many more other parts of the community. So what exactly is stakeholder view? It considers the organization as existing to serve the needs of multiple type of stakeholders with a variety of interest. It believes that an organization has to focus on creation of value. Now here, as an organization, I cannot measure what is value. This term value, it is very subjective for different stakeholders. I'm not measuring it in terms of only money, only profit, which I can see and I can measure. Right? So stakeholder view is a value based view where the people are seeking value from the organization, whereas shareholder view, which is the profit view, the shareholders seek financial returns, financial profits in return. So that is stakeholder and shareholder view. Now, once we know that we have to measure the operational performance, what is the criteria? How can we measure the performance of an organization? What is the benchmark? What is relatively a good measure that I know that I have performed well? I have performed well, not just in this particular week, not in just this particular month, but in relation to something, right? This is known as performance measure. Why we need a good performance measure? To help management develop and implement strategy to support decision making, to motivate managers and other employees, to communicate with or signal to my stakeholders. I need something, I need some measure where I can, with reference to which I can measure my performance, how well I have performed. Have I performed good? Have I performed bad? I need to tell them, tell the management that this is my performance. Now you make objectives in relation to this performance. To tell my managers that this is the kind of level that I want. Now you perform as per this level. To tell the stakeholders that this is my performance, you can expect more or less the same from my organization. Right. Now, there is a saying that if it isn't measured, it doesn't count. If it comes, measure it, measure your performance. Now, if we say that we are adopting a stakeholder view, we know that we are basically inclined towards creation of value, and that value is very subjective. It cannot be measured. Does that sound right? Because ultimately, people concentrate on whatever the managers or the system measure and report. We said that value cannot be measured, but there has to be something, right? There has to be something in the reports for me to measure. I need to have some measurement criteria. If qualitative measures such as innovation, employees, distraction, and environmental impact are considered, we have to find, these are value based, right? But we have to find some important ways of measuring them. In general, we'll just talk about what are the good attributes of a good performance measure. It should be valid. It should refer to how well a measure captures the value or whether it really hits the target. The measure has to be reliable. The measure produces the same result regardless of who is using that measure or when is it used. It should be reliable. It should be clear. It should be easy to understand. Similarly, it should have a cost, a low cost. It should have a cost. It will definitely have a cost, but it should have a low cost. It is not that the cost of measurement is more than the benefits of using the measures, right? So it should be having a low cost if I compare it to the benefits which I will achieve by using that measure. What if the measure is not timely? What if I get to know something very late? Now the time has passed by. I cannot correct my mistake. That measure is of no use. So it should be timely. It has to provide information early enough so that we can take a corrective action. There is no point in getting a delayed measurement, right? Accessibility. The measure should be accessible by all authorized participants of the organization who need the information. It should be controllable or to be influenced by those whose performance is under consideration. It should be resistant to manipulation. Now, there is a difference. When I say it should be controllable or able to be influenced by those whose performance is under consideration, at the same time, it should be resistant to manipulation. What does it mean? It means that it captures the desired behavior at the same time that it discourages the dysfunctional behavior, where managers make decisions which alters the outcome of the performance measure in many ways that do not necessarily benefit the organization, right? So it should not be able to get manipulated, but it should be controlled by those whose performance is under consideration. They can up or down it. then of course the measure should be consistent with the strategy and goals. So these are roughly the attributes of a good performance measure. You can add more to this, but definitely it should not be lessened down than these attributes. These specific attributes should be there in a good performance measure: reliability, accessibility, low cost, consistent, controllable, not able to be easily manipulated, right? So these are the attributes of a good performance measure. Now we say that what is the performance that I want to measure, or what is the measure for performance? Here I've given an example of, say, I want to measure the innovation done by an ordinary the research and development department in our previous slide, which is when we talked about in our previous slide, we talked about that innovation is a qualitative measurement, right? It's a qualitative process. How can we measure innovation? What we can do is we can measure research and development. That's just a hypothetical example. We can measure research and development output, which is the number, what is the number of patents that I have? How many new products that the department have produced? The department has innovated how many new products? Now I say that I have produced new products which are numbered at 80. But who has told you that 80 is enough? That 80 is sufficient? Maybe my competitors are producing much more than that. Or maybe my competitors are producing less than that. Where do I stand in terms of, like, this is the only number, I am producing 80 new products? Right? How can I measure the research and development department's work? In simple terms, if I say that I run fast, is it a good performance? How can you judge my performance? How do you run? How fast I run? Even I am not sure. Maybe I run very fast, say 10 kilometers per hour. But there is a performance measure which says that a person of my age and height can run 15 kilometers per hour. Can you run at the same speed? That will be a performance measure. Now I have set a standard. I have a benchmark against which my performance is measured. If I run at 15 kilometers per hour, I'm doing better. If I run less than 15 kilometers per hour, I'm not performing to my best. What is this 15 kilometer per hour? That's the benchmark. That's the standard against which I'm comparing my performance. Right? So that is the concept of benchmark. I have set something, some standard based on the industry. I'll be measuring my performance, or and then I'll be comparing my performance against that benchmark, that standard, right? And accordingly, I will adjust my goals. So similarly, in an organizational viewpoint, we can always consider competitive business environment benchmarks. Now, when organizations' profit for the year is assessed, it is, when I say that, it is disappointing. Why is it disappointing? Because maybe we are comparing it against a benchmark. Maybe the organizations, and how do we set this benchmark? Maybe the organizations, I'm comparing my performance with my own performance in the previous years, or maybe we are comparing it with the performance of a competitor. Right, but this assessment is made against certain criteria. The point is, in order to be able to make any judgment about performance, it must be made relative to a separate comparable performance benchmark or standard. Why do we use benchmark? Because we want to improve. That's human tendency. We all want to improve. We all want to progress. We all want to make more money. Again, when we did the attributes of a good performance measure in the previous slide, here we are going to do what are some of the attributes of a good benchmark. It should be made in the specific context where an organization business operates, and the companies we are comparing, we are making a benchmark which is well suited to my company. Performance is measured either at one point in time, against comparable standards, maybe my past performance, maybe my internal targets, maybe the industry average, maybe the best industry practice. At one point in time, I am comparing my performance with last year's performance. Right? 2024 performance still down compared to 2023 performance. That is my benchmark at one point in time, or it may be measured over periods of times using trend analysis. My organization's performance is improving. For example, from a trend point of view, I am improving. I am better today than I was yesterday, but it is still lower than the industry average, right? So I'm comparing, I'm measuring my performance over a period of time. So the benchmark could be measured either at one point in time or over periods of time. What are the different sources for gathering information for setting the benchmark? How do we set a benchmark? We'll see the competitor analysis, we'll talk to the customers, we'll obtain quotes from the competitors, we'll be talking to the suppliers, we'll be considering the government reports, and there are so many sources from where I get information, and based on that information, I set my benchmark. Now, let me talk about the balanced scorecard. What is balanced scorecard? It's a method of performance measurement which was introduced by Kaplan and Norton, and it is based on stakeholders approach. We'll take stakeholders approach. Why? Because it is it involves bigger part of the community. Let's recall what was stakeholders approach. Stakeholders approach is considering the organization as existing to serve the needs of multiple types of shareholders, stakeholders who have a variety of interests. Now, what does a balanced scorecard do? The balanced scorecard supports the implementation of the strategy, and it translates a strategy, overall strategy, into the linked casual activities in different parts of the organization. The purpose is to motivate the behavior of employees. In simple terms, we can say that a balanced scorecard means balancing the activities of an organization in 4 different parts. The whole strategy is divided into 4 different parts, and the performance is measured in these 4 different departments. We'll talk about these 4 different departments. These 4 different departments, they balance the long-term as well as the short-term performance, external and internal performance, financial and non-financial performance. Right? So it has to be undifferentiated stakeholder objectives. So balancing is the key in the balance scorecard. What are these 4 different perspectives? The first one is very obvious. We'll say finance. Why finance? Because we know everything in an organization or the world is resting on finance, right? So one has to be financial perspective. The second one has to be customer perspective. The third one has to be internal process perspective. And the fourth one has to be what are we learning during the process? Learning and growth perspective. So we have 4 perspective: financial perspective, customer perspective, internal process perspective, and the learning and growth perspective. We measure the performance among all these 4 different perspectives against the benchmarks. What is the process? The first one is identify. Of course, we have to identify an organization's vision and its mission and break it down into goals and objectives. We have a big objective in front of us. We have a big vision in front of us. We will just break it down into goals and objectives. Right? This is very simple. This is the first step. Right? We divide that vision, that mission into various goals. What do we want to do as an organization? The second step is we link these organization or these goals to individual performances. We make a connection between these objectives with the individual performances, and then we measure the performance, right? We assign these goals and objectives to different people. The next step is we create a planner or strategy based on the findings, and then we set our goals again. Setting of goals is it's a continuous process. The next step is we get feedback of that performance measurement against those benchmarks in this balance scorecard, and then we develop the strategy accordingly. So it's a process where we first identify the goals and objectives, then we link those objectives with their individual performance, then we create a plan or strategy based on these goals, we get feedback, and we redevelop our strategy. We call this as the linkage or cause effect, because each and every next step is related to or is linked with the previous step. And the process of balanced scorecard is the strategy, the whole strategy broken into linked activities. Right. Take a moment to absorb all this. Now, before we understand or we proceed to get an understanding of the perspective, what are the prerequisites of a balanced scorecard? The role of balanced scorecard is that it enables the organization to develop its own unique set of objectives and the consequent measures consistent with that step. So the different measures will be used by different organizations. Now, what are the prerequisites? We need a strategy. We need a clear strategy, clear way, unambiguous way. We have a vision of the company, which is very clear. We have full data regarding that vision. The measures should include both outcome measures, which are the lagging indicators, and measures of actions that create outcome, which means the leading indicators. Now, what is this lagging indicator and leading indicator? A leading indicator is a measurable set of data that may help to forecast future economic activity. That's a leading indicator. Set of data that may help to forecast the future economic activity. Leading economic indicator can be used to predict changes in the economy before the economy begins to shift in a particular direction. What the example could be: durable goods order. If I'm getting some order which is of durable goods, I know that the economy is progressing in a certain way. If I'm getting lots of jobless claims, it means economy is moving towards unemployment. Right now, there are so many jobless people. We are slowly progressing towards recession. So what data gives us this measure? That's the leading indicator, which is leading us to a specific direction. What is the lagging indicator? It's a measurable figure or set of data that changes at some point after an economic or business trend occurs. They can confirm for users certain economic and business trends, quality of performance, impact of business decisions. Right. So, and why do we use these lagging indicators? They are used by government, businesses, and investors to determine future strategy as they relate to proven assumptions or expectations. Right. So, typically, a balanced scorecard with the balanced scorecard, it should be possible to set targets and fix responsibilities regarding the target. Now, we'll talk about the different perspectives of balanced scorecard. The first perspective, as I said, it has to be financial perspective. The perspective include factors that affect the bottom line of an organization and the shareholders' value drivers. We know profit growth, shareholder return, right? So the purpose is agreeing or not agreeing, the purpose is to succeed financially. How should we improve efficiency? Do you have to remember that the financial perspective, as I said, it's the most important one. This is an outcome of all other perspectives. We will study other perspective also in next slides, but the financial perspective is the final outcome. What we are learning, what the customer wants from us, or what is the growth, what is the process, everything will have a financial bearing. So financial perspective is the ultimate outcome. It's the final outcome. Each and everything will have a financial impact. So these benchmarks, they reflect the result, they reflect the outcome of other perspectives also in a combined way. Now, what are the common measures? The common measures are shareholder returns, revenue and profit growth, gross margin, net margin, cash flow, sales backlog, sales growth. How do we get that? We get that from the financial reports. So that's the financial perspective. The second one is customer's perspective. To achieve our vision, how should we appear in front of our customers, right? In this perspective, we try to understand the customer's satisfaction and value proposition measures. I am trying to understand how much my customer is satisfied with my product. Am I able to provide that value proposition which my customer wants? We will be having some measures here. We will try and see some measures here through which we will be able to get whether we are providing a customer satisfaction, whether we are able to give a value proposition. So it refers to identification of customers, their needs, the market segments, how the customers will behave at certain point in time. The common measures are, we can check the sales growth, we can see the customers feedback, we can see the customers concerns, we can have a customer survey, we get to know whether the customers are loyalty, we provide them loyalty points, and whether they use it or not, that reflects the customer's loyalty, right? Whether we are able to retain our customers retention, and the relative price index. How can we get all those reports? From either the internal sources or the customer reports or the surveys, right? So these benchmarks which are there in the customer's perspective, they help us in understanding customer satisfaction and value proposition measures. The next one that we have is internal process. We know that we have to work in a certain way, right, to improve our efficiency, to be able to get the same return, to satisfy our shareholders. What business must we excel at? What are our internal process? Is it defined? Is it serving our purpose? Is it making my process effective? Is my performance okay and up to customer expectation? So all these are the critical business processes. They have an impact, ultimately an impact on client satisfaction, and as I said earlier, in achieving the financial objectives of an organization. However, we have to understand that this is a very sharp kind of point, because these internal processes is not sufficient that we have fixed some internal process once and they will continue forever. No, we have to periodically recheck, we have to periodically reassess that, and we have to periodically redevelop our processes. Right? I have made one process. I'm following step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It worked for me in week 1, but maybe in week 3, some factor changed, and my point number 3 is not working properly. Right? I am faltering on in some aspect of point number 3. Should I continue with the process? No. I have to take the feedback. I have to assess. I have to reassess, and then I have to redevelop my process. Maybe in week 2, I will just go with 1, 2, 4, and 5. I'm skipping point number 3 altogether. Right? So it's something which we have to see almost on periodical basis. And the next one that we have is the last perspective is the learning and growth perspective to achieve our vision. How will how will we sustain our ability to change and to improve? Are we learning something? Are we growing? Because only if we are able to measure our learning and growth activities, we understand about our internal efficiency, about our processes to deliver and provide the improved value proposition to customers. Right? We can say, in a way, we can say that it's an enhancement of the customer's perspective, plus the internal process perspective. Once we understand these above two perspectives, we can improve our processes. We are able to move to a better learning and growth perspective. Right? So here we talk mainly about the improved performances, the intangible asset of human information and organizational capital. Right? So this one is particularly a long-term view. Why is it a long-term view? Because whatever we have learned, whatever our experiences are, if we are able to improve our human resources, that will retain with us. That learning will be retained in my organization. Right? We can change the process based on our learning, based on our growth perspective. For example, in the previous perspective where we talked about internal processes, we can improve process, we can redevelop the process. But the learning, the training, the education, the growth level that we have taken from that redevelopment or that looking into that process again, that has improved our learning. That has improved our training. That has improved the work quality of my human resources. Right? So those measures which tackle or which take care of my learning, they fall in the learning and growth perspective. What are those measures? These are the gross ratios, the rate of improvement index, number of staff suggestions. My staff is getting educated now, they are able to give me suggestions. So if I want to see whether I have achieved something good, whether I have improved on my learning and growth perspective, I'll just see my number of staff suggestions. If it is on higher level, that's a performance measure, right? If it is on higher level, yes, we are growing. Right? So the staff attitude survey, the staff retention ratio, staff turnover, staff training, right? We are giving them training, they are learning. So all that is counted towards learning and growth perspective. What are the sources? Employees training record and employees different record, suggestion record, improvement record, retention record, whatever it is. So in nutshell, what we have learned is that balance scorecard, it measures it's a performance measure. It gives a balance where the activities are performed. The big strategy is broken down into so many other linked casual activities, and we measure them in the four perspectives: the financial perspective, customer perspective, internal growth perspective, and the learning and growth perspective. Right? So these are the four parts of a quadrant where we can understand, where we can try and measure the relative performance. So these are basically the operational drivers of an organization. Right? So these are it's a broad guideline of the operational drivers that we have learned today. In our next video, we will be covering the third and the last part of operational drivers, which is the people and organizational drivers, where we'll be talking more about the organization values, where we'll be talking more about the people who work in the organization, and we'll try and assess the performance of people and other organizational attributes. I hope you all have found some value in today's video. Please update me with your comments. Till then, keep learning, keep growing.